Good afternoon. Welcome. I am so glad to see you all here today. My name is Andrew Penner, and on behalf of the What Matters to Me and Why organizing committee, I am delighted to welcome you here. First, a housekeeping announcement. This talk is being recorded, and so if you don't want to end up in the recording, please move behind the camera. Moving on from housekeeping, I think that as staff, as faculty, as students, we spend a lot of our time working on the mundane but very important work that is required to keep the university running. And what I love about the What Matters to Me and Why series is that it offers us a chance to take a break, to step back and to engage with each other, not just in terms of the roles that we play in maintaining the university, but on sort of a deeper, more human level. And I think that's it's a real gift that the speakers give us. Our speakers are asked to give a talk with very little guidance, just to answer as authentically and frankly as they can the question, what matters to them and why? We'll have some time afterwards for questions, and they'll take the sort of talk wherever it took them. It's always a delightful surprise. And I think particularly in moments like the current moment that we find ourselves in, that's marked by a lot of uncertainty, I think it's really important, more than ever, to connect on this kind of deeper, more human level. And so I'm delighted that John is going to give a talk. Claire will, my colleague on the committee, will come introduce John in a second. But before that, we have a tradition, What Matters to Me and Why, because we are bringing people from all across campus, students, faculty, staff. We like to turn and greet our neighbors. So, those of you who are joining on Zoom, you can, pop something into chat, but maybe your name, where on campus you're coming from, and something you're excited about or looking forward to in this coming academic year. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then Claire will call us all back together and introduce John. So welcome.
All right, time's up. My name's Claire Yu. I am on the committee for What Matters to Me and Why, and I am in the School of Physical Sciences in the Department of Physics and Astronomy. But today's speaker, John Lowengrub, is actually also in the same school, and he's a Chancellor's Professor of Mathematics in School of Physical Sciences. John received his bachelor's in math from Cornell and did his PhD at Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences in New York City. After that, he did his postdoc at Stanford before joining the faculty at the University of Minnesota, and then subsequently joined the faculty here at UCI in 2003. His recent research focuses on mathematical modeling of cancer, things like how cancer starts from stem cells, how it progresses and metastasizes, and on optimal treatment strategies. So he's actually in the Chao Comprehensive Cancer Center here at UCI, where he is a co-leader of the Systems, Pathways, and Targets program, and the founding director of the Interdisciplinary Graduate Program in Mathematical, Computational, and Systems Biology. So in the School of Physical Sciences, he has served as chair of the Department of Mathematics, as well as vice chair of graduate studies. He's won a number of awards, including the Francois Frenkiel Award from the American Physical Society. He's UCI, he got the UCI Distinguished MidCareer Research Award and the Julian Cole Lectureship from the Society for Industrial and Applied Mathematics. Outside of that, he's actually a father of 6 children. Yeah, wow. And what I remembered, and I reminded him, is that he they used to homeschool the kids. His wife homeschooled them, and Jean was in charge of PE for the kids. So he would take them running, and I think they still, 2 of them, he tells me, are still doing swimming, competitive swimming. He likes to swim and run, which is why he's in such good shape, and play in the surf. And I've actually seen him at Crystal Cove once or twice. So please join me in welcoming John Lowengrub.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks for that kind introduction, and thanks for inviting me to give this talk. Actually, there's a bunch of feedback, but it's the first time I give a talk like this. Usually I'm talking about my research, and so thank you for coming, and I hope it goes well. So, I've had a couple of funny experiences this year. And I'm looking at the date and I'm thinking October 29th. So who can remember what happened on October 29th? A bunch of years ago. Stock market crash, 1929. I Googled it, Lowengrub, stock market crash, no association, thank goodness. So hopefully we won't have that today. And I have another experience like that, which I'll tell you about as we go on. So, there we go. So I'm often asked about my name. And so I thought I would start with that and kind of give a little bit of history. So my name derives from Lowengrub, so German, and it means lion's den. And so there are not that many of us, although we have, it's not a very common name. We've tried to increase the numbers, as you heard, but we still are, pretty far down in the most common surnames in the world, and most of us are on the coasts, as you can see. And so my family originally came from Romania, so my side of the family, and from a German-speaking part, Bukovina, which now actually is part of the Ukraine. And so I only learned that recently from my dad. So when you do Google on your name, this is another potential meaning of it, that we were named after an asteroid or a minor planet. Well, actually, it's a typical cause and effect thing. The planet, or the minor planet or asteroid, was named after my dad. And so my dad is a mathematician, and he's a former dean at Indiana University. And in 1995, the astronomers at Indiana University named this planet after him. Minor planet, so it's kind of small. And so my dad is there pictured with my mom, Carol. And so my dad was very big, even though he's a mathematician, he was very big into astronomy, and he really did a lot of efforts. And he was named, this planet was named after him because he was instrumental in building the Wind Telescope at Kitt Peak in Arizona, and this telescope is a joint effort between Indiana and a few other universities. And so I grew up in Bloomington, at where the University of Indiana is, and Bloomington was also famous, not just for the university, but also for this movie, Breaking Away. It was the site of it. And so this is a picture on the main street. Geez, it's not done. I can't even, it's Indiana. This is Indiana Avenue. And so it was about a bicycle race called the Little 500 at Indiana. And that was for basically the college students, and they would create teams, and they'd have to do 500 laps in stadium. And this movie was about that, how the cutters, local people to Bloomington, but not associated with the university, were allowed to race in this for the first time. And it's a really beautiful movie from a more innocent time. And so if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. So I and a bunch of my friends were actually in this movie in a stadium scene at the end. And so it was a big deal back in the day. So you heard a little bit about our numbers. And so I have a big family, and it's a big part of my life. So I have 6 kids, so they're shown here along with my wife, Elizabeth. And so we have 4 girls and 2 boys. So David is, so our oldest is Catherine, who's going to be 28. And then David, and then Colette, in between those, then Hillary on the far right, then Mark, then Rebecca, and then 3 grandchildren. So the oldest is Audrey, who's between Rebecca and Mark. And so she's 9. And then we have the little ones, little boys. They're 3 and 2, Tommy and Ethan. Tommy is 2, Ethan is 3. They're little terrors. So often I'm asked, with such a big family, how do you balance work and life? And the simple answer is, I don't know. And I don't even know if I do, but I try. And so I'm inspired by, well, this is, I don't know how to, let's see if I can get this bar. Okay. So I was always inspired by this by a former mentor of mine, Kathleen Moravitz. And so she is at the Courant Institute, and I was very fortunate to be her student and to be mentored by her. And she's a very famous applied mathematician. You can see that she has won, many awards. She was the first female mathematician who won the National Medal of Science in 1988 or 1998. And she did all of this in spite of having 4 children and multiple grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And she was often asked, so there's the classic interview, which I remember, was in Science magazine, where she was asked, basically, she was recounting a story, rather, that when she was in her younger years, didn't she think, didn't she worry about her kids when she was at work? Because this was a time where certainly not many women were in science, and in particular mathematics. And I often get the same type of question. And her answer was very typical Kathleen. So she is Canadian and had very dry wit. And she answered, no, it's more likely that I would think about a theorem when I'm with my kids. And to me, that's also the case. And another feature that I thought was really important, especially for her and people growing up and trying breaking the norm or just trying to progress in their careers, is the idea of a mentor. And so when she won the Birkhoff Prize, which is for outstanding achievements in applied mathematics, she noted that of all the many people that influenced her in her career, there was one that stood out. And this one was Richard Courant, who was the founder of the Courant Institute. And he stood out because he supported her and encouraged her in the early stages of her career, where it was really a struggle, with this family. And so to me, that's the important role of mentoring that I try to emulate as well. And I've benefited greatly from mentors in my life. And I've tried to pay it forward, as you'll see a little bit is going on, where I've tried to instill the things that I've learned or teach the things that I've learned to the next generations, including my family, but also my students and postdocs and so on. Okay. So like many academics, my career has been driven by the idea of curiosity and exploration. And so I found this quote of Ernest Shackleton that I think kind of embodies the ideas behind it. And so Shackleton said, I believe it is in our nature to explore and to reach into the unknown, and the only true failure would be not to explore at all. And so I feel that as an academic, or just generally, this exploration is a fundamental part of my life. Now, Ernest Shackleton, how many have heard of Ernest Shackleton? Okay, good, a few. So for those of you who don't know Ernest Shackleton, I strongly urge you to learn about him. So he was a great leader. He was an Irish-British explorer, which is kind of an unusual combination. But he was a polar explorer in the early part of the 20th century. And so one of the things that happened to him is that he was exploring Antarctica. And in particular, he really wanted to be the first one to go to the South Pole. But he didn't succeed in going to the South Pole. He was beaten there by Roald Amundsen, another explorer. And so as an alternative, he managed to convince people to fund a trans-Antarctic exploration, so where they would go across the Antarctic. And as part of that exploration, his ship got stuck in the ice, and the ship was disintegrated, and the men were stuck on the ice and had for more than a year, and they had to make their way back to England. And amazingly, he led this team, the whole team, nobody perished. The whole team made it back in one of the most amazing stories of adventure and survival that there is. So I strongly urge you to do that. But he was an explorer. That story resonated a lot with me. So what matters to me? So I'll just kind of tell you up front, and then I'll kind of go through a story of illustrating it as best I can. So in my career, really what's mattered to me, and kind of life in general, but particularly with career, is to acquire new knowledge, to always learn something new, and to overcome challenges and do things that had never been done before, like Shackleton. And at the same time, try to make a positive difference in people's lives. So both through my research, my teaching and mentoring, and in my service back to the university and the profession. And so what I thought I would do is go through, at least give you a little bit of a personal journey on my path to here, and try to illustrate as best I can, these kind of things that have, goals basically that have guided me. So let's start with why I chose mathematics. So why do you choose a profession? Well, although my father is a mathematician, and I was always pretty good at math, I never really thought of it as a career growing up. In fact, my father always cautioned me, or at least I remember him cautioning me when I was younger, saying, well, mathematicians spend most of their time stuck. Do you really want to spend your life being stuck? You're stuck proving a theorem, you're stuck doing a calculation, or you're stuck finding a bug in a code. And so, with that caution from a mathematician father, why did I become a mathematician? So I think, in retrospect, I became a mathematician because it appealed to both sides of my brain. So math is an art, so the beauty and of mathematics and the beauty of a proof or a concept, what's maybe an esoteric concept, but a concept appealed to the artistic side, the right side of my brain. Whereas the applications of mathematics, the rigor and the science appealed to my left side. And both working together, I think, since mathematics satisfied both, it was very appealing to me. I'll give you some other reasons later why I chose it. But in fact, modern research now actually shows that this left side, right side is maybe not as rigid as we thought, and actually creativity requires the use of both sides. And so the art and the beauty of mathematics appealed to me, as well as the application of it and the use of it to inform science. So I didn't start thinking of math as a profession until I went to Cornell University as an undergraduate. And there basically I went as a chemistry and biology major, like many of us, pre-med, although I don't know if I really like the med part because I'm not a big fan of blood and guts and stuff like that. I have a daughter who I think, and a son who are much better suited for that. But I quickly discovered, after taking chemistry and biology and working in a lab as a work study student in my first year, that laboratory science wasn't really for me, especially because of the 8 a.m. Saturday labs. We had a chemistry lab at 8 a.m. on Saturday mornings, and I was not a morning person then. I'm barely more a morning person now, but certainly was not then. And also, my laboratory skills were pretty suspect. I remember, we would do these assays where they would mix a bunch of, we we'd get these solutions that had a bunch of chemicals mixed all together, and you'd have to do experiments to try to guess or figure out what was in them. And I always found everything in them because I didn't clean my glassware properly. So, so I discovered that that really wasn't for me. Instead, when I was there, I just really found that the logic and beauty of mathematics was what appealed to me. And I did that through, basically through coursework. And in fact, one of the summers that I was an undergraduate, I took really my first applied mathematics course, and it really resonated with me. And so I decided, well, that really is exciting. And then when I went back and continued, I actually did research as an undergraduate and discovered that my mentor had given me an unsolved problem, which of course I didn't solve, but at least I built a computer program to simulate it. But even though I liked mathematics very much and began to think of it as a potential profession, I still wasn't sure that that was for me. And so at every career stage, particularly this one, I thought, well, is this a path I want to continue? Do I want to become a research mathematician? And I thought, well, let's explore. And so Cornell has a really good engineering school. So I went through the interviewing process in my last year through the engineering school, which was kind of unusual. It's sort of like characteristic of my career. I'm always working in areas where there's not that many mathematicians. People did mathematics, but not like, in the way I did it. So I remember that it was a very cold and rainy day in Ithaca, and I went to interview with this recruiter from the Hughes Aircraft Company in Manhattan Beach. And so we talked and we chatted, and it was such an unusual combination, I think, for him talking to me and me talking to him, that they actually invited me out for an in-person interview, which I was so excited because I was coming from Ithaca, New York, where it was cold, rainy, snowy, and I went to Manhattan Beach. I didn't get the job, but I had a great weekend in SoCal. And so in the end, my dad actually gave me the best advice for having to make these kind of decisions. And this is advice actually that I've tried to instill in my kids, in my trainees, basically anybody who asks. And that is that when you're confronted with many options, choose the option that gives you the most opportunities for the future. And so with that in mind, I decided to go to grad school because I figured if I went to grad school, I'd still have the option and I'd be better trained. And so I went to grad school in math at the Courant Institute, as Claire mentioned. Now, the Courant Institute is actually a very special place. It was established by Richard Courant, who came over from Germany in the 1930s, early 1930s, to escape from the Nazis. And he built this institute in the middle of New York City. And the building that's behind him is Warren Weaver Hall, who was one of his sponsors. And Warren Weaver Hall is a 13-story building. You can see it here. Only mathematics and computer science. That's it. And it was an amazing place to be. And there were people there. This was New York, so everybody had all kind of crazy hours. There were people there all the time. But one of the unique things about this place was that the classes were once a week for about 2.5 hours, between 2.5 hours and 3 hours, so once a week. So that gave a ton of time to explore New York, but really to explore the passion, right? Explore the science. And so I remember when I first went, at the beginning, they bring all the graduate students together and tell them, okay, what do you expect? What do we expect of you? And so one of the things they instilled on us was, well, this is a kind of unique time for you. You're not yet a research mathematician. you don't have, now I know what it means, it's serving on committees and all this other stuff that will distract you. Here you can really learn. And so to me, this was a place of incredible learning. That I remember, well, of course, in those days, it wasn't that long ago, but it was long enough that there wasn't really an internet working well. And if you wanted to learn something, you had to go to the library. And so I remember going to the library, so it's in there, I forgot what floor, 12th floor, I think, and spending hours in there because I'd be looking for something, but then I'd get distracted by something else, kind of like what happens with you on the internet now, but this was science and math, and just discovering these manuscripts and just, I think I spent most of my time, my undergraduate, especially before I was starting my thesis, just exploring the library and going to seminars. That was another thing they told us. They said, go to seminars. They said, you're very likely you're going to learn at the beginning, you might understand the first 2 minutes. And as you go to more, maybe it's 5 minutes. And then if you can understand 10 minutes, this is out of an hour, you should be working in the field. And this was math. And so, but what I found is that as you go and you attend more and more, you begin to hear these concepts, they begin to come together, and you really begin to learn. And so I've always encouraged my students to go to seminars, go and learn, just learn. And that will, it will help you gain perspective. At Courant, I was very fortunate to have Russ Kaflish as a PhD advisor, and he is a great mentor. And so we were there. It's a funny story. So we were there, and I was finishing my degree, and I think I had taken a job at Stanford, but I hadn't gone yet. And so I got a call from the chair of UCLA. And the chair at UCLA said, may I speak with Dr. Lowengrub? And first thing that came to me was, well, you must be after my dad. But no, it was me. And so the chair asked me if I could write a letter for my advisor on what it was like to be his PhD student. So I'd never done anything like that before. So I went to my advisor and I said, I've never done anything like this before, but I'll tell you what. Why don't you show me the letter you wrote for me, and I'll know how to write the letter for you. He didn't, but so I had to do it. But anyway, but another thing that happened there. This was my first real mark in math. It was where I did my first real mark in mathematics. So I worked with my advisor Russ, but then also a colleague Tom Howe, who's now at Caltech, and Jonathan Goodman, who's still at Courant. So what we did is we proved a result that many accomplished mathematicians didn't believe was true. And we were also very surprised it was true, but we couldn't find a mistake in the proof. And I did the calculations, and the calculations showed indeed that the proof was certainly consistent with the proof being true. And so I'll never forget that when Tom and I went to our first conference after proving that result, and one of these famous mathematicians was in the audience, and after we presented the results, he grabbed us literally and took us into an office where there were a bunch of postdocs. He kicked all the postdocs out of the office. I don't know how he did it, but he was a big guy, so he was intimidating. So he kicked them all out, and then he told Tom and I, but neither one of us are very big, and he was a lot bigger than us, that we had set the field back 10 years with our result. And Tom was convinced he was going to take a swing at us, because he had been going around for 10 years saying what we found was not true, and that they had developed this whole other theory to deal with it. Fortunately, he didn't take a swing at us. And it wasn't us that had set the field back 10 years. So I left NYU and I went to Stanford. And at Stanford, so I went to the math department there. And there were two big events that happened at Stanford. One was the Loma Prieta earthquake. And so I was there in 1989 when that earthquake happened. Now here's the other weird thing about my giving talks this year, this fall. I gave a talk on October 17th, 2025 at Stanford. That was the first time I had been back at Stanford on October 17th. I've been back, of course, before, but again, I did a Google search, Lowengrub, Loma Prieta earthquake. Luckily, there was no association. But here's a cautionary thing. Google Gemini told me when I did that Googling and said, there's no association, but I do work on earthquakes, which actually I don't, so it made it up. But the other big event was that I worked with Joe Keller. And so Joe Keller was an amazing person. He's probably the most preeminent applied mathematician in the world of his time. And he actually, I'm not sure how many people have won 2 Ig Nobels. So these are awards given for kind of interesting but sort of odd types of research. So he won an Ig Nobel in 1999 for designing a teapot that wouldn't spill. And then in 2012, he won another one for explaining why when women run, or I shouldn't say women, when people run with long hair, typically women, why the ponytail, and you put it in a ponytail, why the ponytail goes side to side instead of up and down. So he had a mathematical theory that explains that. And so what I learned from him was that math isn't all about beauty. Yeah, it's like how it changes from this motion to this motion. And so it's mathematical. But what I learned from him was that it's nice to have a beautiful proof. It's nice to develop what we would call beautiful mathematics. It looks together and it's like, the hand of God put it together. But it's also important to have the end result in mind and to use or invent whatever mathematics you need to determine that, to basically determine that end result. And so that idea now has guided me basically through my career, that you have to guide the math to answer the result. A lot of times in mathematics, one might change the problem a little bit to get an elegant proof. But here, what he taught me is that, no, this is the problem you have to solve. You just have to figure out how to do it by whatever means possible, so the math can be messy. So from there, you missed this one, Claire, but that's okay. It was only a year. So from there, I went to the Institute of Advanced Study. And this is an amazing place. I was there for a special year, technically on leave from Stanford. And this is where Einstein was, and I saw his office, but because there's usually a parade of people that wants to see where Einstein's office was. But it was, basically, this is a sort of a think tank for academics. And I was there for a special year, and when I was there, it was where I made my second real mark in mathematics, working with, again, Tom Howe and another colleague of mine, Mike Shelley, who's now at the Courant Institute. He was, we were all at the Institute for Advanced Study at the time. And here what we did is we developed so instead of a proof, it was a computational algorithm that we could use to very efficiently simulate the interfaces between multi-component fluids. So think of oil and water. And there are many industrial processes where you have mixtures of fluids and you want to understand how they behave, like how can you mix them or how can you separate them. And our work was really able to basically open the whole avenue of exploration that made simulating these problems possible. Nobody told us we set the field back for that one. So after my time at the Institute, I went to the University of Minnesota. And so that was where I went through the ranks, basically going all the way from assistant to full professor. And I was in the math department, but I spent most of my time talking with material scientists and chemical engineers. How am I doing on time? Oops, I think I need to speed up. And so it was there really that I learned how to collaborate across disciplines. And so basically what I learned is that you have to be able to speak the language. So you have to learn the language of the discipline you want to, of the people you want to collaborate with. And even more importantly, you have to find the right collaborator. So it was there that I really discovered this. And basically, it was a very interesting and dynamic place. So that brings me to UCI, where I am now. And so here, why I came in 2003. So I came because the university and colleagues here, I was recruited by Ching Ni in the math department and Fred Wan, and also Arthur Lander in the School of Biological Sciences, and our dean, Ron Stern. And so what was happening in that time is that there was an effort to build collaboration and programs linking mathematics and biology. And I came knowing that I wanted to do that. At the tail end of my time at Minnesota, I wanted to do that, and this was a great opportunity. And so here I've been able to, and been fortunate to work in the math department and now the School of Physical Sciences, but be part of the Center for Complex Biological Systems that runs a new PhD program that we have in mathematical, computational, and systems biology. And now, actually, since this is 22 years, right? And this year, either the winter or the spring or possibly the fall, depends on how quick the process is, there's going to be a new department in systems biology in the School of Biological Science. So it's really been an amazing journey. And so I'll just close with, basically I've benefited from all of these activities and mentorship from outstanding mathematicians and scientists, and I've tried to, as part of my career, give back and try to give the same type of mentoring and encouragement and support to my students, postdocs, and junior faculty members as what, all the things that I benefit from and learned from. On the research side, well, here's a picture of Rachel Souza. So trying to do things that will benefit society and make people's lives better. And one of them is curing math with cancer. And so this is Rachel Souza, a joint student so she's a student in the MCSB, Mathematical, Computational, and Systems Biology program. And she's working with myself and Francesco Marangoni, who's in the School of Medicine. So he's an immunologist. And what she's doing is mathematical immunology, but applied to cancer. And so this is actually a talk you can find on YouTube that she gave that I think it was the third place talk for all of the UC system. She won the UCI one. And so that's just a snippet of why it's important to use the math to do something. And in this case, my kids always ask me, when am I going to cure cancer? Well, I say we get closer every day. And then finally, in service, giving back to the university. The university has supported me and my work and my students. And so it's also very important to me to give back and to give back through my time and service as serving as department chair and various leadership positions in these areas. So with that, I'm sorry, I didn't think I went over, but I'll stop and take any question.
Great, John. Thank you very much for that. Really enjoyed the talk. Okay, we got a thing back here, but let me wait till I bring you the mic so people can hear it and Zoom can hear it.
Does your academic background and academic interests influence your children's career choices?
Great question.
What?
None of them are mathematicians.
The Rubin Quarter for Women. There was a lecture the other day on Vera Rubin, and it turns out that all her 4 children got PhDs.
Yep.
And they were really fascinated with astronomy and math.
Yep.
So that's why I asked you if you
Sure.
had any stories, and what do you think determined what your children ended up doing?
So that's a great question. So yeah, my children, for some reason, were much more interested in the humanities side than the math side. And maybe that's, for me, not talking as much about the math. My dad also didn't talk much about the math, but somehow it just came naturally to me. And so for our kids, they're much more interested in either in the science part. So one of my daughters I think could be an engineer. She loves building things and designing things, and that's the kind of scientific outlet. Others are, a son and daughter are basically they're studying to be medical professionals. So my son is studying to be a nurse, and one of my daughters is actually is a beach lifeguard and saved people's lives this summer, and is doing EMT training now, so they get that. Another one of my daughters is studying business, so there's some quantification there, but she just doesn't like the math that much. And I think in part the math, and I hate to say it, a lot of it is the teaching. And then I have trouble with that because I would explain things to them and they say, well, this is not how my teacher taught me. And so, overcoming that has been a hard thing. So another one of my daughters is, interested in law, and there's the logic. So it's all related, but not as much on the science side. And so Vera Rubin, it's interesting you mentioned her because my dad knew her very well. And Carl Rubin was a colleague of mine in the math department. And yes, they're all educated, but I think, with PhDs and doing science and stuff. But to me, also what I see is that that there are many opportunities now, so many more opportunities for kids these days. And in a way, they're taking advantage of that. So one of the things I've learned to do is kind of adjust my expectations. I came from an academic family, so my sister has a law degree and my brother is an economist with a PhD. And so I thought, to be successful, you need the PhD. But as I've grown up and had a bunch of kids and I see different career paths, I'm like, as long as they're happy and they're doing things they're like, I'm supportive of that. But none of them, maybe my granddaughter, possibly, we'll see. She likes math. Not the terrorists.
For someone who's constantly at war with math, what's one way you would suggest to make it more enjoyable or more bearable at the very least?
So that's a great question. And sadly, math is something where people tend to either love it or hate it. And my answer to that is that it's a lot of the teaching, right? And so even for myself, right, taking classes, I remember taking something called real variables. And so this class is basically like calculus on steroids. And it's a fundamental class that you have to take as a math grad student. And I think I studied that 3 times. I did that class 3 times. Once in the actual class where I managed to get through it, but I didn't understand what was going on. Then I had to study it again for exams. And then I had to study, one set of exams. Then I had to study it again for another set of exams. And it wasn't until I studied it the 3rd time that a light bulb went off. Oh, that's what it is. So to me, the best way I can say is perseverance. So you look at it, and the problem is to not try to rush through, but you learn it once, but and you go through and you struggle with it, but try not to give up. To go back, look at it again with fresh eyes. And if that doesn't work, look at it again with fresh eyes. It will make sense. And so it's that you don't necessarily get it the first time. And even for a research mathematician, you don't get it the first time, especially real variables. Either what in the world are they doing this for? We knew this already in calculus, but it was showing why something was true. And then the third time, you eventually figured out why people are doing that. So hang in there. YouTube videos are also helpful.
I wanted to thank you for your talk. Very interesting. You mentioned that your father did not encourage you to go into math at the beginning. So what did he think when you actually decided to go into math?
I think ultimately he was very happy about that. Yeah, I think he felt proud that somebody was following in his footsteps. So my sister was definitely not into math, and my brother was. For economics, there's math, but to be honest, I'm not sure how much math he's doing, as a part of that. But it's not the same type. But he liked it. So as he grew older, and I grew older, and we could have conversations about math, and then I think he really liked that.
Thanks, John. What a great talk. We love learning about you here. I had a question more on the family side of things. When you were moving around, from New York to Minnesota, when did you meet your wife? And did you guys ever have to solve the two-body problem? And do you have any advice on that? Or were you just lucky she just kind of came with you wherever you went and everything worked out?
So I got married. I got married when I had moved to Minnesota, and so maybe 5 years after I moved to Minnesota, 6 years, and so all the moving around so much, I had done that sort of already, except this was a big move, coming to here, and so we met actually at my parents' house. So she was a student at Indiana University, and she was a swimmer. And so she was swimming on the master's team, and my mom and my sister were there, and they swam on the master's team. And so she was there over a Christmas holiday, and they invited her to Christmas dinner. And it's kind of a funny story because I had come home from Minnesota, and I was upstairs watching Star Wars because Star Wars was on. And she was saying, I really didn't want to go to that thing because Star Wars was on. But she felt she had to go because they invited her to come to Christmas dinner. And so we met Christmas dinner at that time.
Did you watch Star Wars?
No. We watched Star Wars now together, but we didn't know. We both felt, okay, well, I have to join and be social, so.
That's about it for all the time.
Yeah.
If I can.
Sure.
You mentioned that your dad said not to go into math because you'd spend all your time stuck. And I'm curious, when you encounter people who are stuck, or when you feel stuck, what do? What sort of, do you have any advice for those of us that feel stuck in life?
Yeah, so Joe Keller gave me a great piece of advice about that. He's like, when you get stuck or you think you solved a problem, take a break. And that's the thing to do. You take a break. You just get up, you go, you clear your head, you do something else, and then you come back to it. And oftentimes that will help getting stuck. I remember many times I would be stuck, especially in grad school, and later, and then sleeping, and somehow your brain is working while you're asleep, and you get up and you realize you know how to do what you were trying to do before. Or you're out, like in my case, out running, and I'm working something out, but you have to get yourself out of the situation. And he also, in particular, he also told me, when you think you solved a problem. So when you think you solved a problem, take a break, because any good problem you can solve many times with the idea that your first attempt was wrong, right? And so then you get back and do it. So that was his intention. And so it's really taking a break. You just get up and clear your mind.
All right, so I think we're out of time, but if you have more questions, I think John will stay around for a little while.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go ahead and thank John again for his very nice talk.